Welcome everybody, my name is Krush AK and this is the Market Meditations podcast. We chat with fascinating people from around the world to extract mindsets, routines, stories and habits to help you build richer lives. Meditator's CEO and co-founder of Ngrave, Ruben Merre, has come on the show and I don't even know where to begin with this one. He has delivered so much value, whether it be cryptocurrency and how it can change the world, cryptocurrency security, how to learn a language in as little as 15 minutes a day, how to hire the right people for your business, how to build a business, how to read and learn properly, and so much more. You do not want to miss out on this episode. Meditators, welcome to another episode of the Market Meditations podcast. Today I have a very special guest with me, Ruben Merre, the CEO of Ngrave and co-founder. He is quite an interesting individual in the sense that he has done so much, so many different things from, he's been trading, he's started his own business at 8, he speaks multiple languages, he's done multiple postgraduate degrees. There's so much to him that I just want to dive into his mindset and extract the secrets that make someone accomplish so much so well. So, Ruben, how do you decide what to do next? You've done so many different things. What makes you decide, oh, this is what I want to do next? This is the skill I want to master next?
Yeah, that's a very good question. To be honest, I actually have been searching myself for a long time. So the answer isn't that quite straightforward, I would say, because when I was a kid, I was all over, let's say, anything I could learn and could get my hands on. I wanted to soak it up, and so I was reading all the time. Kids are on the swings. I was also on the swings, but I was reading, and that evolved to a point where I was really school tired, like many of these high gifted children typically have. I had it around 14 years old, and for some reason my interest was gone for everything. And I was very lucky because it was also the exact same time that one of my best friends said, "Hey Ruben, I just bought you a guitar for your birthday." And I was like, yeah, okay, let's try it out. Because I never played an instrument or anything even remotely close to it. So I was 14, 15, I took the guitar, and as from that moment I was, I think, almost inseparable from it. So in the 3 years that followed, I was playing day, I was playing night, and I finished the whole 10 years of the academy. And that also, so from on one side, it pushed me a bit away from the general stuff like watching the news and learning about volcanoes or butterflies or whatever it could be. And so it pushed me a bit more into music, but at the same time, I knew that I really wanted to get another type of degree first. So I studied business engineering, which is like, you could say, civil engineering, but with a focus on economics and business and managing companies. So I did that for 5 years. Then I actually went to do the entry exam for conservatory, so the music university. And I was sitting there with all these 18-year-olds. I was 23. I was still super young, but anyway. And I was like, wow, this is so strange to be back like in first grade. So, and I also was afraid that the way that they typically teach there, which is like very classical, I think it would ruin my my creativity, or at least it would take so much time to build up all that structure in the classical sense that I would say, fuck, I really want to, I always wanted to be my own voice. I bought a different type of guitar than most people. I bought a different type of amplifier, even though considering, let's say, post-mortem, that, the Marshall amplifiers are amazing, but I didn't have one. The Fender guitars are also amazing. I didn't have one. That I would say that kind of got me in a bit of a strange road in my life. And eventually I was working. And the funny thing about that is I was doing almost the exact opposite of what I should be doing. I was a consultant. I managed big projects. I had to manage big budgets. I had to plan. All of those are things that I naturally don't like. I'm not a planner. I'm more like I look on the left, I see a dog. I look on the right, I see a bird, and I'm always distracted. So I was basically doing jobs in my worst qualities, in my worst talents.
So you deliberately picked ones you're bad at to get better at?
Well, actually, I just graduated, and I didn't know what to do. So I had 8 or 10 different pieces of paper, And on them, I had written like crazy things. So for example, one of them was I wanted to go to Japan and do karate university. um, Another one was, let's say, go and help out in NGOs in Africa, and so on. So it was like very diverse, and I couldn't choose. I had absolutely no idea. I didn't know what I had to do, what I had to become. So at 23, still didn't know what I had to do. I knew that music was like one of my big whys, one of the big reasons I'm here, and something I really have to do in the future as well. But I also knew that it couldn't be only that. And the only reason why I rolled into, let's say, the consulting part was because one of those big firms, Deloitte, they're called, they actually called me. They said, hey, we want to, let's see how it goes. And after one day, they called me and said, all right, you're in. And I was, okay, this is my first job experience. Why not? But I remember after day one I said to myself in my head, wow, I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be doing this.
Why not?
I just like, the vibe compared to what it was and what my personality was, it was almost opposites.
Ruben, from what you've said so far, it sounds like you have, at first I thought it was passion, but as you continue to explain, it seems to be a fundamental curiosity in the nature of all things. And on top of that, a sense of purpose, because you said music is my why. What do you mean by that why?
Yeah, so I think one of the things you really have to figure out, ideally when you're younger, is it's why are you here? And you have like the books that, for example, like from Stephen Covey, the seven habits of effective people, of highly effective people. Many people read the book, but they don't really implement it or anything such. But one of the things he says, and it's so simple, is just like, look 50 years ahead, or let's say 100 years ahead, you're on your deathbed, you look back to your life, what do you want people to say on your funeral? Do you want them to say like, this was an amazing musician, for example, or it was just a nice guy, or something like that? You start from the end goal and you work your way back, and you kind of set intermediate goals like, okay, every few years this and that, but that eventually becomes a daily a way of daily planning. Like every day, if you do something, even a little bit, even reading a book for 15 minutes, you have the compound effect. Every 15 minutes will count, and at some point, let's say if you study German, every day 15 minutes for a year, you will speak German. I lost the thread a bit. So what were we talking about?
We were talking about the why and your fundamental curiosity and things, but really 15 minutes of German a day and you think you can learn German for a year, or at least basic speaking?
Well, here I'm actually not even talking about myself. So yes, I also learned German. I did it my own way. But there is a guy, I don't remember his name. He did a TED talk. And what I really liked was the way he starts off. He says, okay, this is an amazing painting, right? Who here in the room thinks they can paint it? And nobody or almost nobody puts their hands up. And then he says, okay, in 10 minutes, I will convince you that everybody here in the room can paint this. And so what he does is he suddenly shows a whole different slide. He just shows a rectangle and he says, okay, who here thinks they can draw this rectangle? Everybody can. Okay, if you can draw one, you can draw two. If you can draw two, you can draw three. You can draw 10,000. And he zooms out and you see like it's just a painting. The painting consists of all these super small parts. And that's how he starts, and suddenly everybody believes that they can make the painting. And he says, so what I did was I started with 15 minutes of German on my phone, talking to it. I realized I was always distracted by these crazy gaming apps, so I deleted them. So I had no choice. I had to speak German. And yeah, after a certain time, he was able to speak German conversationally. And then he went to Germany, obviously purified it a bit. But and there are many things he did after that, so it's very inspiring. Maybe I can give you the link for after the podcast. It's a cool TED talk. But I also try to do things like that, and I think I call it a compound effect, which is also what Albert Einstein called as the strongest force in the universe. So yeah, if anything, look it up and implement it in your own life. I do it with 50 minutes a day of reading. I have the luck that I can read a bit faster than average. So that also gives me a bit more room to do in those 15 minutes. I also play 15 minutes of piano every day. It's not a lot, but it gives me the time to practice some things.
Well, that 15-minute thing, I didn't think 15 minutes would be enough to have any meaningful effect. I thought it'd be too short,
Yeah.
but I guess 15 minutes of deliberate, calculated, planned focus, and that can add up. And it's something I'm not only going to implement, but I have a friend right now trying to learn Farsi, actually, and they've been struggling for a little while. So I'm just going to try send that link, get that link from you and send it to them, see how they do.
Yeah. And also, for example, in learning, what you have to do is you just have to, or even in any kind of project, you have to break it down, granularize it to the smallest block of it. So let's say if you're studying music, you're taking a really hard piece of Chopin, for example. Then let's say a bar or two bars that are absolutely insane to play. It's not insane to play one of those notes. It's not insane to play two. It's not insane to play three. So imagine you play one bar for 15 minutes. One bar, it's maybe 2 seconds, and you have 15 minutes. So it's 1,000 seconds for 2 seconds. You can practice that one bar 500 times in that 15 minutes. So imagine how good you are in playing that bar after 500 times. And the only thing you've done is you spend 15 minutes one day. Next day, you do it for another bar, and you go on.
When did you figure this out? Because it sounds like you've been compounding this for a while. What made you realize the power of this granular? It's a couple concepts. It's one, compounding slowly, and the other you've mentioned is deconstructing a big end goal into the granular, minute details to reach that goal.
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know when I figured that out. I also would say that even if you have it figured out, it remains difficult in practice. And obviously, the most important or most difficult part in action is taking the action. And then when you're in it, you're in the flow. You have the law of Newton, who says like, okay, everything that's in the flow, it continues to move. So that's where it comes down to. If you want to go run, first, you don't think about, I have to get up and I have to run. You just think about one leg out of my bed, second leg out of my bed. And before you know it, you're running. So that's important, but it's the biggest challenge also in those whole 15 minutes, let's say. And if I think about Ngrave, for example, so my company right now, it's huge. The things we have to do, it never stops. We, on the one hand, we have to build the most secure hardware wallet in the world. On the other hand, we also have to market it, and it can go up until the tiny things like, okay, a color on a specific leaflet, or a typo in a font somewhere in one of our screens on the zero. It goes on and on. And the way we manage that a bit is every Monday. So what I did, I built an Excel file. It's sort of a Gantt chart with, let's say, 500-600 lines, and it's on a daily basis. And every Monday in the morning from 9 to 11, so just 2 hours tops. It generally takes even 1 hour and a half only. We go through all of them, through all of those 500 lines. And we just say, like, for example, this component, this one tiny little component of 2 millimeters big, it has to be in the device, otherwise we're screwed. But it has its own line, and we know, like, just by looking over it, this thing, we got it covered. It's okay. Let's go to the next thing. So 2 seconds, but it brings it to your attention. It goes immediately out, but you know if there's an issue or not. And I think that is one of the secrets to being very effective, and especially with a small team. And we're only 3 co-founders. We have a lot of partners, but the team is still just the 3 of us. But we know exactly what's going on in every aspect of our business because of that.
And so what we did clear is direction, because you're continually reminded exactly where you're trying to go by reviewing that every single Monday. So your actions that week become deliberate rather than scattered or stuff getting forgotten.
Yeah, exactly. And we also know, like, okay, if something needs to be finished in 5 weeks from now, we work our way back to today and we see what needs to be done and we do it. And if we need to, let's say, put 5 extra developers in parallel with the ones who are working, we do that. So that's the way you figure problems, and you think about the bottleneck, the critical path, and you plan everything around that. And that's let's say, theoretically speaking, very easy to do. But in practice, if there is one supply chain component, like we have now a lot with Corona, that suddenly says, hey, it takes 26 weeks if you order me today before I arrive. Yeah, those are things you also have to, in one way or another, know upfront, or let's say take into account or think proactively about.
So, Ruben, so many things I want to bring up and address there, but I'll go for the most recent one first. So, you deconstruct this problem down to the granular level, and now you're continually reminding yourself of the direction you're going. But with every business, it's never going to go that smoothly. Stuff like Corona happens, and what's the mindset, the mental models for handling issues like that? Is it the same deconstruct the problem and assess it, but then how do you deal with changes to the macro plan?
Yeah, I would say it's always about knowing which factors could be impactful for your business, keeping sort of tabs on that, and when the moment arises and the problems are there, the first thing you need to do, in my opinion, is take a step back and think indeed about the bigger picture. So, for example, when Corona hit, when that was, I think, a month or so, or 2 months before our crowdfunding campaign in 2020. And we were also talking with some investors to add some more funds. And yeah, Corona came by, all the markets crashed. They were like, yesterday I had, let's say, at 20 million. Today I have 10 million because everything halved. They also withdrew from their putting their money on the table. And we were like 1 week away from doing it. And it was logical and rational to do that because they also didn't know what was going to go on. Even if they said we love the project, this is not the time to spend money. So that meant that we also, well, all events were canceled, our physical events, and we have a physical product. So in crypto, physical products are very rare. Imagine you go to an offline event like Paris Blockchain Week, which would be the first one. It's a high conversion for us. People hold it in their hands, they see what it does, they understand, and they say, wow, I need to have this. And that huge power of offline conversion completely dropped. And also we lost some investors at the moment. Eventually they invested later on when everything went a bit back to more normal. But at that time we were like burning a lot of cash because we were developing. We were not seeing any investments coming in, and we didn't make any sales yet at the time. So we had to put on hold some of the developments we were doing. Again, those that are not on a critical path. So those that okay, if I do them in a month, they will still be able to catch up with the critical lead times. And so that's how we manage it. We went back to the high level. We checked what the impact would be. And typically what you also should do is have an idea of what the risks are for your business. So on a let's say a more macro level, it is what is crypto doing. We started building this in April 2018, which was like in the middle of the crash in crypto, and then there were 2 years of crypto winter. And initially, we wanted to build something that was more like an MVP, something we knew, okay, we go fast to market, we build it, we show it to everybody, and then we iterate from there. But as we saw that we actually had the time, because it was crypto winter anyway, we said, no, we're going to build the best product. We're going to go for the full Monty because if you think about the ones that already existed, those are the MVPs. They prove there is a market. So it was up to us to prove that there can be actual security. So you can.
Ruben, why?
Yeah.
The story is there, but the why is something I've never been able to figure out. What made you care so much about crypto security? What made you passionate about it? What pointed you in that direction?
Yeah, it's a good question. It comes from a couple of things. I would say the first one is the belief in the technology and in the blockchain, but also crypto. And the other one is also my personal why. Why do I exist? I mentioned something about music, but that's just one part of me. If we go to the first one, I realized that blockchain was something with huge potential when I thought about very concrete examples. For example, I think remittances is a big problem. Like a tangible example is some Pakistani father is working in Dubai and he wants to send funds to his family. They pay 10 to 20% transaction fees, and it takes a while before it's cleared and so on. So his family gets it considerable time later, and they get 20% less. And there are many more problems than that. But so imagine you have a crypto wallet. You can suddenly send it in real time, and the transaction fee is almost zero. So something like that in a remittance market, I think it's like 650 billion a year. It's like on the top of my head, but I think it's probably something like that. So yeah, that's something that so many people could save so many people in what they do in their daily lives. Another example I really like, and I mention sometimes, is if you have like a tsunami, it wipes away all the land of a developing country, and there is a dictator that assumes ownership of all the land because he says, I have a centralized database. Everything you see here is mine. Nobody can contradict it in the traditional sense of the databases. But if you introduce blockchain,
Has that happened?
which
Like,
in Honduras, for example, in 2014, something like that happened. Yeah, so they disowned the farmer population there, and it was a dictator who did that. So those examples, I immediately thought about. Okay, let's assume everybody has indeed one single immutable version of the truth. Then the dictator can say what he wants, but at least there is a sort of a premise or a proof or an evidence that can inspire, let's say, I don't know who, but maybe America to at least do something about it, you know. And that's something that is so powerful about a blockchain. Another thing I also like is I'll stop after the third example. um, but so there are many, and that's why I believe the technology is so important to foster. The third one, no, what did I want to say? Yeah, so if you think about insurance, there used to be a company, I don't know if they still exist. It's the simplest form of insurance on the Ethereum blockchain. And so you just say, okay, I pay 0.01 ETH to insure my flight. And if it's too late, I will get one ETH. If it's too late for like 10 minutes, I will get two ETH if it's 20 minutes late. And it's just linked to the database of obviously in the back end of the airline. And it will immediately pay out. Just when you know like it's 10 minutes delay, boom, you already have it on your account. That's interesting. That's sort of the smart contract logic. But you can also apply that to, let's say, big disasters where suddenly an earthquake comes and everybody is like, whoa, and the insurance money could be there like immediately. If an oracle like the Chainlink can say, indeed, this is the scale on Richter and the magnitude of it, and if that's confirmed, then the smart contract basically automatically pays out the funds, the insurance funds, to the people who are or the companies who are involved. And again, it's something so powerful. You could go on and on about that, and that's just blockchain, right? It's not even crypto.
and that's not even Ngrave either. So that's the
No.
why of blockchain. That's why you've gravitated towards blockchain. But and
Yeah.
it seems to be values again. You're passionate about it. You like it because obviously, if you stayed at going back to your Deloitte example, you could have easily moved up through the ladders and got a super comfortable, high-paying job. But you've chosen to pursue these passions and interests, and that's why blockchain. But why Ngrave? Why does Ngrave excite you, and why does Ngrave make the world a better place?
Yeah, exactly. So if we take maybe one example for why crypto is so important, or let's already have like the store of value for like hyperinflation countries who are currently like losing their minds because you know, like Venezuela in 2018, they had a inflation rate of 1.8 million% in 1 year. So that means their money is worth absolutely nothing, and they have to buy Bitcoin, but at the same time, it's not something that they can easily do. And yeah, they are also looking for solutions in which they can actually store their funds, can be a bit more like their own bank. And that's also something we would like to contribute to. And I know today our product is premium, it's a bit more expensive. But if you think about Tesla's first car was also extremely expensive. It also took them long to make it. And meanwhile, they are with the Model 3, and you see more and more of these cars driving around. And the vision was not, we want to sell high premium cars and then make a lot of money and that's it. No, they wanted to popularize the electric cars. And previous electric cars were very ugly, so they were able to build something amazing there. And I think we are doing something similar. So we start with the full blown thing that we at this moment think is the most close to perfection, at least today compared to other solutions. But in a few years from now, I hope I can also serve the unbanked or the underbanked. So that's part of the philosophy or the vibe that we have inside the company. We want to build a better world. And if I look at my own why, I think it's something more in the sense of I always want to aim higher. So I always want to improve. I always want to learn. I want to become better. And I want to be out of my comfort zone almost all the time. And I want to create and I want to innovate. For even with music, if I have to play a partiture like a score, after I cannot play one score as it's there. I start doing my own stuff in the middle of the song. I just can't follow it. So that's how extreme I have it in myself. So if I work somewhere, that's the same thing. So what's better than have your own company where you basically challenge the whole status quo of the industry? And I think if you look, for example, at current hardware wallets or current security, any security solution almost in the space, they are not end-to-end. They do not think end-to-end. They say, here is a hardware wallet, here is your key, and if you lose your key, here is a piece of paper. But a piece of paper is the worst place where you can store your backup. So we told ourselves, no, you need to have an amazing hardware wallet. And what if you lose it? There needs to be a better solution than paper. So we built the graphene. And our mindset is really like always asking ourselves, what if? What if I lose my zero? I have a backup. What if somebody finds my backup? It should not be just possible to read off the key like on a piece of paper. It should be impossible. It should be an encrypted backup. So our graphene backup is encrypted. It should also withstand house fires and so on, because you don't want to lose your Bitcoin just because it was on a piece of paper. So we build a solution that withstands 1660 degrees of Celsius, or like 3000 Fahrenheit. So we put it into like with burners, you went over it, it doesn't do anything. That's what it's supposed to be. That's what you call a secure backup. And obviously we kept thinking, okay, in this end-to-end solution, what happens if I lose my backup? Today it's the end. If you think about the Quadriga exchange in Canada last year, the owner died with the private key, $200 million frozen forever, because he cannot brute force private keys.
This sort of this sort of innovation, this desire and enjoyment to go against the crowd, you're probably one of the most suited people I've ever seen to actually being an entrepreneur. And it's a blessing that your interests have taken you to the crypto security space, something where I don't know how to put it, the bad guys, the hackers, the people trying to get to your wallets, they're the ones trying to innovate in the opposite direction. And we've got you on our side fighting to innovate in the opposite directions, preemptively stop these hacks and issues as they come up. And going to fundamentally this thing, the fact that you're so suited to being an entrepreneur, who do you look up to? Because I don't know how many people you can find as compounding with learning, as innovative as you are.
Oh, I think, that's a good question. I've never really had, let's say, I always found it a bit strange to have idols, or at least to idolize people. So I never really did that. I think if you think about what is the greatest superpower you would want to have, for me, it's simple. It's not like flying in the air or being invisible or anything. It's really just like having a mindset where you are very positive and where you can seize the day every day, where you can be happy with what you have, where you can, and it's very difficult for most people to have that. And I think my mom is a good example. She's really good at that. So I'm inspired more by that. If I look up to entrepreneurs, I don't know them. I don't know who they really are. So it's difficult to, let's say, look up to somebody who might be an asshole. Obviously, I do appreciate the things they do, or how they're trying to change the world, and that's the thing. Those are the things that I find inspiring. For example, as an entrepreneur, and in general also, it's not failure that's the issue. It's how you handle failure. And how fast you get up, let's say. But what I mean with that is, if you look at, for example, Elon Musk, that I liked about him is that he, for him, it's not about the failure that he has if a business which completely collapsed. He doesn't care about that. For him, failure is not trying to do anything, not trying to build a new company and trying to reach further. That's what for him is failure. And I think that's. That's the thing I wanted to convey.
No, you've conveyed two big points, and it's something people struggle to convey because whenever someone asks, "How do you start a business? How do you become a good entrepreneur?" They want you to give them an idea, and then they have that idea, and that makes them rich. But when you take a step back, the common variable between all successful people, or not all, but a vast majority, is one, a positive mindset, that happy mentality that draws the right people in, that keeps energy levels up and just has these compounding effects, alongside another one, which I've just seen everywhere on every guest on the podcast. It's win or learn. There is no win or lose. If you make it win or lose, it hits that positivity, it struggles it. And those two, I'd say, I can't think of anything that's up there in terms of importance with being a successful entrepreneur.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the way you have to see that is a bit more like it has to be in your mindset. So you have to think success and you don't think failure. Because imagine you face a difficult situation, think I'll win instead of I'll probably lose. Because when you compete with somebody else, also there, think I'm equal instead of I'm outclassed. If you think like that, you have to master the thought of I will succeed. It will dominate your thoughts and your thinking process. It's something I learned from one of my favorite books. It's called The Magic of Thinking Big. Um, the easiest, let's say the easiest thing they mention in the book is the size of your success is determined by the size of your belief. If you say I've built a hardware wallet like I did, let's roll it out in Belgium, and then from Belgium let's roll it out to Europe or to the next country. Yeah, it's a mindset. It's a go-to-market. It can work. But what if your mindset is no, we have to sell it worldwide. We have to be in every country in the world in 2 years from now. Your go-to-market plan will be completely different. And even if and then you have books like 10x, so you think 10 times bigger than what your actual goal is. I think that's very important, because even if you fail and you only get somewhere in half of it, you still are 5 times further than you were with your small mindset before. And for, let's say, people who are, how do you say that, not braggy, it's difficult to do. In Belgium, most people are very, why don't I know the word?
Braggy or not braggy? So do you mean arrogant or humble? I'd say.
Yeah, humble. That's what I meant. Now it sounds like I don't know the word humble, but that's not true. So in Belgium, we're very humble. So we always think on that more like regional level. And so it's very hard here also to grow out of that and to jump out of that. So when we were in the US, like last year, 3 months, so obviously this year, never with Corona, we realized that there was a big difference in the mindset. If you say 500K that you want to raise in Belgium, it would be 5 million in the US, things like that. So, but again, that's also how you succeed. The more budget you have, the bigger marketing you can do. And you have to do a balancing act, of course, at all times. But yeah, it's very important to have that mindset.
I like that you said balancing act, because I was going to counter, Ruben, that coming from more of a Middle Eastern background, there's not so much of the issue with humbleness, but more of an issue with a large ego, pride, and those things can be just as detrimental as well. Early, when I was much younger, I went down the entrepreneurial route, and it cost me a lot because I wouldn't do business if someone hurt my pride, and that stopped me reaching my goals. I would be a little bit arrogant, which would make people like me less. And interpersonal skills are hugely important. So there's definitely a balance there. You don't want to go too much on the pride and over accomplishing end, or over ambitious end, rather, in terms of, hopefully that was communicated well.
No, totally, because like a good example is doing a capital increase, right? So you can say, I want to raise $20 million, I want to raise 5. Those things are always a bit arbitrary. But the most important challenge is it's not necessarily better to take 20. Yeah, you have a lot of meta clauses in the term sheet and so on, but also there will be 20 million sitting on your bank account, looking at you every day and asking, hey, I want to do a 10x. Hey, I don't want to do a 10x. And if you just start with 3 people, then 20 million is probably too much. So yeah, you have to grow healthy as well, and not raise 1 billion in the first month of your startup.
Besides the humility, is there anything else you struggled with and had to teach and learn to really, something that was a weakness that you had to counteract and get better at?
Yeah, for sure. So um, that's a bit the thing that I had in my early career. So I was doing jobs that were basically relying on my weakest character traits, let's say. So I'm not really a planner. I'm more like an improviser and a guy who does it all on the go. More like visionary than doing the implementation. So I'm more like a strategic thinker. And yeah, my job was planning, getting these people under control, blah blah blah. It felt a bit strange. I knew like this is not what I should be doing, but I kept doing it because you also have the sentiment. I think it's also a bit from entrepreneur side. You're not a quitter, so you don't quit. You say, okay, maybe I feel like shit. I'm doing this. So because of that, I did it for years, and eventually that made me an expert in all my weak uh, spots. So now I'm an expert planner. I'm the guy who plans everything at Ngrave. But at the same time, so all these for me right now, it's a huge asset that I have been able to do that. That I could basically pull up all my weaknesses to expert level, and now I can focus on my strengths, and that's what all comes together now in Ngrave. Because yeah, when I was a junior consultant, I got a lot of how do you say that? I don't want to say shit thrown to my head, but so
A lot of crap.
just
We can tone it down a little.
yeah, we can say crap. We can, or like a toot in the yeah, but so yeah, I had a rough time because it wasn't my natural strength. And right now I'm very happy because if I wouldn't have had that, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing now. And you have like a book, it's called The Hard Thing About Hard Things from Ben Horowitz. It's a great book. It's more about all the shitty situations you can be in as a CEO and how you have to handle them. For example, tomorrow your best friend and co-founder for 2 years, yeah, you have to fire him or something like that, and then he explains how he did it. So you basically have a functional CEO and you have a strategic CEO. The functional one is the one who implements. The strategic one is the one who thinks about everything out. And right now, I'm actually kind of both because of the long years I had to torture myself.
Wow, those okay. Two questions I want to ask. I'll make sure to get to both of them. Firstly, this is something I've seen a lot of debate on. Whenever I read about it, there's some people who say throw yourself out of your comfort zone, work on your weaknesses, bring those up. But there are other people who say hire people to handle your weaknesses, double down and leverage your strengths. Where do you find the balance on that? Someone who isn't as far along on their journey as you are.
I think there it comes down to knowing how to manage your business and knowing when there are like red lights going off. So you need to be able to figure out what the red flags are, where you are needed most, how you can help. And yeah, that said, the more you know about anything, the better you are in helping resolve those things, or the easier you can find out where the fire is burning. If you cannot read code and they say, yeah, we have 50 gigabytes of code, but you can't see what it means, yeah, then you cannot see if there's a red flag. So yeah, obviously, good people are extremely important because you only have 24 hours in a day, and you need people that you can fully trust on, and that's probably the most challenging thing about the business, building the team. Right now, I can say I'm very lucky with the two co-founders I have.
How have you built the right team? How have you built the right team? What's the secret?
I wouldn't say I've built the right team, not yet, but but I can say that the three co-founders are the ones who should be here right now at this place. We haven't grown the team yet too much on the marketing side and so on because, yeah, we still are a startup and we still have to adhere to budgets. But what we are good at is, for example, in the last 2 years, we've built a team that can develop amazing things. And that didn't start like that. I mean,
but how, Ruben? How did you choose these right people? What's the mind like beyond like how they were actually found? Like, what were you looking for when you brought on these people onto the Ngrave team, even the core team or consultants?
Yeah, well, for us, what's really important in the first place, it's like integrity. Yeah, so we need to be able to trust you to an extreme extent. I think that's really important. Why? Because even in the smallest corners or where you don't expect it, there are sharks always, and that's one of the sad things we had to. I mean, we keep learning every day that still, if you like somebody so much personally, it can still be a shark who is looking for something more or else. The second thing that's very important for us is proactivity. I think that's a trait that cannot be underestimated. It's somebody who comes to you with a problem but already thought about the solution. You don't have many people like that. And that's very important. Also, it's an important trait as an entrepreneur because it makes you think, it makes you look ahead. It makes you plan for success. It makes you think about the organizational skills, and also it makes you put service first. So you don't say, "Yeah, I want to get paid 100K this year because I just joined your startup." No, you're like, I don't care. Pay me when it becomes necessary. We will of course need to talk about it in every couple of months, but I'm here to help. I'm here to build this company. That just those mindsets are completely different. And you get people who are amazing on paper, and then they say, "Yeah, but I want to earn so much because I want to start as a consultant, and I want to have shares. I want to have a car. I want to have this and that." We cannot give you that. We don't have that. We don't even have that for ourselves, and we've been fighting for over 2 years. So you have the integrity, you have the proactivity, you have the diligence, and so they need to be hardworking. And even with your own co-founders, the smallest difference there can mean a conflict. So imagine that I work until midnight every day, and my co-founder goes at home at 5 every day. Therefore, apart from that, we have the same exact vision, strategy, everything in mind. We're completely aligned with the best friends, but still, that will eventually grow into a sort of a conflict. So yeah, you need to get people with the same mindset. And in a startup, that's obviously diligence and perseverance that you also include that. There are many more, but
No,
if I would say,
yeah, please.
Yeah, I could say obviously passion is important and motivation. You need to be versatile, but then I would say you need to be mostly versatile as an entrepreneur. So you need to be resourceful. You need to be able to pivot. So you need to be flexible, able to improvise. You need to be stress resistant. The list is long. The list is long.
It is. But you honed in on the most important ones. I mean, because some of them are variable, some of them are binary. The integrity, that's binary. Like if you can't trust the person you're working with, you can't do business with them. There's just nothing that can be done to overcome that. Then the proactivity was another great one. The fact that someone can come to you with a solution. I've noticed that myself as well. People are very good at identifying problems and throwing them at you with a bunch of notes, but someone who has common sense, it's not so common. The common sense to weigh up the pros and cons, the opportunity costs, apply some game theory, and then come at you with a solution is a truly valuable trait. And your answer, it's so profound. You thought this through so much. All your actions seem so deliberate. And it's incredible, Ruben. I'm learning so much from this podcast. I'm going to go back and listen to this for sure. Now, as we draw towards the ends, I think I told you in advance I was going to ask this, but Ruben, you're an avid reader. You've read multiple books. You've quoted multiple books throughout this. And it's a very difficult question, so it doesn't have to be your absolute top books, but what books do you think everyone should read?
Good question. Everyone, then I would definitely say The Magic of Thinking Big. So it's a book by David Schwartz. It's a book that's been around for a long time. But it's all about what's in your head, right? It's all about the mindset. And he says so many things. For example, one that I really like is excusitis. We always find excuses that we say, okay, I'm too old, or I'm not feeling healthy enough, or I'm not intelligent enough, or hey, luck is always not on my side. So those are all types of excusitis. For example, the age excusitis is the one on age. So he says, compare how much time you have left in productivity compared to what you've already done. Let's say you're 40 years old. Then you've worked 17, maybe 20 years of your life. And you probably still have to work till 65. So you still have to work 25 years. So you're not even in the half of your career. If you think like that, how can you be too old for anything? So that's important. I remember when I was 10 and I went to karate, like the first time, and I said, "I'm 10 years old. I'm too old." I remember I said that. But even at 30, I mean, you're still extremely young. You've worked 5 years, 7 years, maybe 10 years. So So yeah, that's a very important one that comes from that book.
Any others you would recommend?
Yeah, for sure. I also think that what's important is that just that aspect of believing big, that you multiply your goal a couple of times to make sure that you get at least above your goal. And also like a positive memory bank. Yeah? So you just put positive thoughts in your memory bank and then you sometimes pull them out. That maybe sounds strange, but that's also something he did. And he also said like put service first. Yeah? So like the proactivity thing, very important. Another thing he said was like grow the you are important attitude. So people do more for you if you make them feel important. It's also what Dale Carnegie said a lot. Carnegie, like talk to people, be genuinely interested in people, and the more because that will also make you more interested over time. Suddenly, you will know this is the dog, this is their wife, they're playing flute, and you will be able to get into deeper conversations. So if you can make people feel important, they also will become more important, and so on. Give people planned attention, you could say, or show people that you care. Do something for your mate once in a while, just because you can, not because there has to be a reason.
So giving without expecting stuff in return. And I have to ask, so much of what you've quoted and learned has been from books you've given, not from the many postgraduate degrees you've gotten and the study you've done. What do you think about that sort of education as a whole compared to what people can self-teach themselves now with the internet and all the books and knowledge available?
Yeah, very good question. Actually, I have a lot of opinions on that because I also did a lot of learning on myself, and I didn't learn everything in books. No worries, because the only way you can know how to run a company is by running a company. You can read 1,000 books; it doesn't matter. What I do is when I am in a certain stage of my company, I read books about that stage. For example, if you want to do a fundraising, read books about fundraising, read books about term sheets, read books about how you have to negotiate or which terms are the most important ones. If you know all of that up front, I think that's very important. And generally, I would say in education, it needs to be a continuous switch between theory and practice, because you do something, you learn something, and then you go do it, and then you come back, you learn more, and it makes you it gives you more structure in your head, like, okay, I have to do it like this. Now I learned because I did it wrong when I was actually doing it. So I think that needs to be more of a switch between the two of those. I think in Belgium, the master degrees are a bit more academic, so you have a bit less practical let's say internships that you do. While in the US, you do a bachelor's degree, you take 2 years of work, then you do an MBA. So that's already a bit different.
I feel what that does, just to expand on what you said, it's very much memorization versus truly understanding. And if you're applying, you have to understand. You can't just apply, memorize stuff, and expect to do it successfully because there are too many variables in real life.
Exactly. So I try to read books about the stage I'm in. So I know, like, okay, so people have done this before. What did they struggle? And I can immediately think, wow, this is something that resonates. While if I'm reading a book about doing an exit of my company, who cares? I'm not exiting my company. So yeah, that's a bit of the difference. One thing I maybe would like to highlight is the way I learned languages. I tried a lot of different methods, and the one I like the least is doing like evening school, where you go, or let's say the way you get taught in school. They teach you how to conjugate, like they say, I am, you are, he is, we are. That's crap. Who learns a language like that? And like I've learned Latin, I've learned Greek that way, I've learned French that way, English, and I can tell you that it's boring. It's not motivating. It doesn't give you any passion. So the one method I would really recommend is called assimil. It comes from assimilate. So you internalize a language. You know exactly if it's the third person plural in the future perfect or something, if they ask you, but you don't ever have to practice it like that. It just comes to you natural. And actually that method, it's about 50 minutes a day. So and the beauty about it is you start you just listen to one course. It's very small. It's like one little page. And then they say, just look a bit around. From the left side, it's let's say in Spanish. The right side, it's in English. And you understand absolutely nothing. You continue like that a couple of days. And when you arrive at 2 months, so that's around 50 lessons. Sounds a lot, but
Ruben,
they're like
what are
50,
you actually
50
doing
minutes.
when you're looking at these side by side? What are you actually doing? I didn't quite understand that.
Yeah, so first you listen. You don't understand anything because you don't speak the language. And then you just look like, okay, on the left it says, I'm going to the mall or something like that.
Right.
And then you read it in English. And you do it again and again. And that's the only thing you have to do, nothing more. And you go to the second lesson, it's the same thing. The third lesson, fourth lesson. What you don't realize is that sometimes they put in there a past tense or a future tense or a specific, something that doesn't exist in English, but like a name file. For example, you say chico, chica, stuff like that. And after a certain time, they tell you, okay, you do the next lesson, but you also go back to the first one, and now you just translate it from English to Spanish, and you don't look at the Spanish part. And you're like, what the fuck? It's super simple. You can do it. And that's when it hits you like, whoa, I actually learned how to speak. I go to lesson 2. It's easy. Lesson 3, and you never had to do any grammar, but you know the grammar. And that's how people learn languages. They don't. It's not your dad that's sitting in front of a baby and says like, "Hey, we're gonna do some conjugations." And the beauty is, it's 15 minutes a day.
Anyone can do that.
It's super powerful. Yeah.
That's absolutely incredible. I guess you kind of answered it a little bit, but with all of this reading alongside running this company, alongside your other passions, constant meetings, podcasts, how do you maintain a work-life balance? Is it super efficient with times, everything 15 minutes a day learning?
No. I wish it was like that, but just like anybody else, I'm also lazy. So no. And in terms of work-life balance, I would say I don't have any right now. So, but I do hope I can get back into the studio. So just one evening per week or something when we're allowed again. And so play some music there, do some recordings. But also, I once did some tests to see like, how should my life look like? And entrepreneurship was one thing of them, music another, but also like family. And I need to have sort of a real balance between that. Obviously, right now, I cannot have that. I'm in the startup phase, and yeah, this thing has so much potential that I'm not sure if I ever will have. But then it will become important for me to do so. Right now, I don't have a girlfriend, so yeah, that's one thing less I have to care about. Yeah, but yeah, so far no work-life balance. It's even worse because I like to surf a lot and ski. I didn't have a car for the last 2 years, and I couldn't go surf or ski, so I haven't done that.
A year without skiing is not a real year, is it?
No. So for me, 2018 till 2020 now, it's just 1 year, and I can still go skiing.
I mean, you've given me the answer most passionate entrepreneurs give me, which is I don't have that work-life balance. Is it something you actively think about? Do you sit down and go, this is the ROI on my time from this business, and this is the love and pursuing my passions that I'd get? Like, is it an active decision, or like me, I just bury my head in the sand and go for the work, and then hope that someday I can scale out?
Yeah, well, I think it's probably also a good trait for being an entrepreneur. It's that you have a sort of a healthy naivety. Naivety, is that what they say?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, because if you think about what we have done right now, let's say you go back 2 years in time, we were completely crazy. There's nothing else I could say about that. We said, okay, we're going to build a hardware product, which is by itself already notoriously hard. If one thing doesn't work, everybody sends it back. And for most companies, that can mean bankruptcy. Second, we said the security has to be the best we've ever seen. Otherwise, we don't trust it. And that was the whole reason why we built it. It's EL7 security. It's the highest in the world. Yeah, why the hell would you do that? Why would you even start doing that? And then thirdly, we did it with crypto in the middle of the winter. Everybody said Bitcoin is dead. We were like, nah, in 2 years we'll come back. We have to build this. And everybody in crypto thinks that everything is a scam. So we were basically standing in front of 3 huge walls that we had to tear down, and we said, yeah, let's do it.
And here
because
you are.
we were a bit naive. a bit crazy. And I'm happy we were, because otherwise we wouldn't be here. But yeah.
That's a great answer. Also, not a great answer because it doesn't tell me how to solve my lack of work-life balance. But we'll just be naive a little longer until we can find the right way to go. And heck, I'm sure your schedule's far busier than mine as well. Ruben, thank you so much for your time. There has been so many nuggets of wisdom. I mean, I normally make a thread after the podcast about all the key points guests make. I think yours is going to have to be like a 20-section thread of all the books you've mentioned, the helpful advice. Thank you so much for your time. Is there anything you'd like to leave our audience with before we end this podcast?
So basically, we're working every day, day in, day out, weekends included. That's how it goes. That's the entrepreneurial life. So we wouldn't be able to do this if we didn't have a real big reason to. And the reason for us is exactly that. We want to make people feel more secure, make them more secure, foster a technology that can improve so many things for so many people. So that's the reason why we get out of bed every morning. It's because if we do this just for ourselves, then 7 days a week, it's crazy. But if you can do this for a greater goal, then it's amazing. Then you don't feel the pain of hard work that much. And I think that's very important to add. And as an entrepreneur or an aspiring entrepreneur, that's what you have to look for. If you can't have that, it's going to be difficult to keep going. So you need a big passion to, well, in our case, it's help people.
I'm so glad you said that because it's put into words an actual tangible reason. I'm so glad you took the time to remember that because that makes sense. If you put yourself second, the hard work all gets justified. It's a greater cause. And again, thinking big and setting those big goals, all of this comes to having that bigger cause outside of yourself. Ruben, I've said it 3 times now, so let's go for the 4th time. Thank you so much for your time. Meditators, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Market Meditations podcast, and I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Market Meditations podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like us to continue bringing you fascinating people from across the world, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you like to listen to these podcasts, and share the episode with a friend. If you have feedback or an idea for a potential guest, reach out to me on Twitter @KaroushAK, and do not forget we write a newsletter covering all important topics in crypto and traditional markets. We send it out 3 times a week. The Market Meditations newsletter. You also get early access to these episodes and you get transcripts and extra notes as well. So make sure to subscribe there as well.